Hello and welcome to today's news at the BBC. Today's topic would be war brides in general and where it happened. War bride is a term used to reference to wartime marriages between soldiers and foreigners, especially during World War II. Servicemen also married many women in other countries where they were stationed at the end of the war, including France, Luxembourg, the Philippines and Japan. About 1,000 GL, which is the US Marine soldiers' war brides, left the United Kingdom between the 1942 and 1952. During and after the World War II, more than 60,000 US servicemen that married overseas were promised that their wives and babies would receive free passage to the US, the Operation War Bride, which transported more than 70,000 women and children, began in Britain in 1946. The first set of the war brides, about 455 British women and 132 children, arrived in the US on 4th of February 1946. Approximately 43,500 war brides went to Canada, accompanied by 21,000 children. The overwhelming majority of these brides were of British origins, about 93%. Because Canadian soldiers were mostly stationed in Britain and had been there since 1939. To the women of war-ravaged Britain, America's G's were like a breath of fresh air, and nothing was going to stop them from filling their lungs. The soldiers' carefree, happy-go-lucky demeanor turned many a female head. Throwing the food, chocolates, cigarettes and stockings the soldiers shared with the destitute citizens. And it's easy to see why so many young women gladly pledged their troth to them. During the Second World War, most British war brides married soldiers from Canada and therefore were sent to Canada after the war or during the war. Since the Canadian troops' last destination was Britain, the Canadian soldiers spent most and last of their time in Britain meeting the British girls who were just like them, desperate to find love or, more specifically, sexual intercourse. Looking at it from another perspective, on the one hand, British soldiers weren't in Britain because they were fighting the war other places in Europe, like Italy, Africa, etc. Leaving the British girl desperate, waiting to meet the one someday. Since that someday was far to come and Canadian soldiers were arriving, the British girls found a solution. Being with the soldiers gave them their needs on both sides and could give them the possibility to get some fresh air. Girls at that time were more than just tired of being afraid to die any moment, tired of not knowing when the next bomb is going to rain upon them. With all that in mind, the Canadian soldiers arrived, there to give them all possibilities they have dreamt of. On the other hand, the soldiers had been fighting long in battles and war, where they had needed some sexual intercourses, since they didn't have seen much of that in the wars. Now the question is, what happened if the soldiers died in war? Surrounded by falling bombs, strict rationing and nightly blackouts, a generation of young women found love. They were brides, British and European women who married Canadian servicemen in the Second World War. After tearful goodbyes to their families, they embarked on a grueling journey by ship and train to join their husband and in-laws in a new country. Once they arrived, many war brides had to confront culture shock and desperate homesickness before embracing their new lives in Canada. For the Canadians, local women offered companionship and calm during daunting circumstances. With death and destruction so close, thousands of these couples met, dated and married instantly, determined to live for the present. Around 70,000 British wartime women were won over by Americans' wealth and charm, offering the girl brides free passage to the US Army to start a new life on the other side of the Atlantic. But the American dream wasn't as expected for many, and seeing their husband out of uniform was different as well. Finding them accused of stealing the men in the hometowns they came to was a shocking treatment for the GL brides. Finding the truth about their husbands, some of whom were cheating on them even as they were sailed over. They were promised houses, factories, a dream life. Brides arrived to shocking situations, like seeing his parents were landowners, far away from everything, was not expecting. If death occurred, their wives were left with almost nothing to live on. Desperately, they could or were forced to pick their husbands' pockets after they passed away just to have enough money to feed their children and buy a passage back home. Others arrived to America only to know that their so-called dream soldier is abusive, with a combination of drinking most of their time. But again, just as we can find negative, there is to find as many positives in these situations as well. Some came to find their soldier's family as wealthy and friendly as ever promised, lived there happily only to find the soldier returning back from war well. And others who lost their love of lives, passed away in war, were eventually sent back home, and some stayed, but that would it only occurred very often, or it didn't occur very often, sorry. Now you can hear some two quotes from real war brides that we've got. The first one is, many of marriages lasted and were happy, but for so many women there were a lot of adjustments to be made when they first arrived and saw the men in the cities for the first time. Another quote would be, they looked very different. Even in the context of their home life, their family and their real job didn't look as heroic as they did in their army uniforms. Let's hear Tara on the other side. Now Tara, can you tell us where did they meet and how did they even marry? How did this marriage occur, please?
Yes, they actually met each other in parties and night dance clubs. Girls went to the parties with their friends and met the soldiers. They fell in love and met secretly at places. They couldn't meet like other pairs because if the girl's father saw it, she couldn't leave the house. So it was not all the time they could meet. And it wasn't all girls that could meet their love, only some. Somebody had it easier than others. When the girl's parents got to know that she was in love with the soldier, she should marry him. Some parents wouldn't accept it. After they were married, the husband was only allowed to be with her for a few weeks. It was because he has to carry on with the war. He should go back, and he couldn't visit her when he wants. He must have the permission, but it wasn't that easy. The saddest thing is that women mostly got pregnant just before their men should leave them, so he couldn't be with her and take care of her when she got pregnant. The girls should stay with their parents and miss their husbands. Every girl waited for her husband to come and visit her. Yes, their wedding usually took place at the register office or at the girl's home. There weren't many people for the wedding, just their relatives and family friends. Not every girl got married, but most of the war brides got married with their men. It was not the most happy life the war brides lived during Second World War.
Thank you very much, Tara. I will get back to you later. Now, Munisa, can you please tell us the perspective to the movie War Brides and what they had in common at that time, please?
It was a long journey for the war brides when they found their husbands. They didn't know too much about them, and it was a hard season to get over. According to the movie called War Bride, the pair only met each other once before they had a sexual intercourse and fell in love. The girl didn't know too much about him. Actually, she knew nothing about him. Only that after they got married, when she was moving in her mother-in-law's house, she was shocked, because that was not what she was expecting. And this is not the only war bride who didn't know too much about her soldier. But some war brides lived happily until they lost their husbands in the war. And there were also many war brides like these. In the movie War Bride, Lily's friend lost her husband and planned to travel to London again. This is one of many stories about war brides.
Thank you very much, Munisa. And now last but not least, Sally A, which is going to tell us if the war brides were allowed to marry again.
The more important question is, why would they want to get married again? coming home after a long journey to America only to find their husband abusive, drunken, or even dead was a reason to find another man to provide food and money to live. The woman who chose to travel to America almost never came alone. Usually they've had children with them. If they didn't want to buy a ticket back to their family, that would be a solution: marry again. Anyways, they would find a way to return back to their old lives, just with a child this time.